Now, we'll get going here in a couple seconds. Appreciate everyone's patience. Hopefully everyone's having a good end of the school year.
Mhm.
Cannot believe it's almost July, frankly. Unbelievable.
No, right.
Let's get rolling. All right, let me click record. Morning, Justin.
Mhm.
All right, and we are live once again. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another NGSBA webinar. My name is Michael Quedal, Quality Controls for the New Jersey School Boards Association, and thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about today's topic, Setting District and Board Goals, a practical guide for school board members. Join NGSBA's Michelle Kennedy and Jean Cleary from the Field Services team for a discussion on how school boards can set focused, measurable goals that support effective governance that result in increased student achievement. Learn the distinction between district and board goals, explore examples, and walk away with practical strategies you can apply during your goal setting process. We want to let everyone know that this webinar does offer one board member academy credit, one BMA credit that will be reflected on your transcript. Give us a couple business days due to it being a manual process on our end. A couple things regarding the Zoom features really quickly. Towards the right side of your buttons, you will see the CC button as your closed captioning functionality. If you click that, as always, it'll allow you to view the closed captioning of this session. You will also be able to view and save the entire transcript of the session if you need it. The Q&A is turned on. If you have any and all questions, please use the Q&A function. It just gives us a better way of organizing the questions coming in. The chat is also turned on, so if you want to drop a comment, say hi, tell us where you're from. We'd love to hear from you. We definitely want your feedback. We want to hear from you, so please use the chat function. Both are turned on, so we'll be monitoring the Q&A and chat throughout the presentation. Attendees of this webinar should be aware that views expressed by non-NGSBA employees and outside speakers or panels are intended purely for informational purposes and do not necessarily represent the views, opinions, or mission of the New Jersey School Boards Association. NGSBA remains committed to providing nonpartisan and apolitical information, resources, and advocacy to advance public education and promote the achievement of all students through effective governance. Finally, today's session is being recorded and will be available on NGSBA's website under the Trainings tab. Click Webinars. That's where you'll see all of the previous webinar recordings we've had and a lot of great webinars upcoming as well. And it'll also be available on the SWUGO website, how everyone came in here today live. It'll be available there as well, along with the slide deck. And we encourage you to use that as a resource and share it with your district team. All right, so without further ado, it is now my pleasure to introduce Michelle Kennedy and Jean Cleary, Field Service Representatives for the New Jersey School Boards Association. Good morning to you both.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Thank you. Before we get started, Jean and I will just take a few minutes to formally introduce ourselves again. So I am Michelle Kennedy, and I am one of the field service representatives here at New Jersey School Boards Association. And I service Atlantic, Cape May, Cumberland, and Salem counties. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And I'll turn it over to Jean so she can introduce herself.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Jean Cleary. I'm a field service representative that covers Essex, Union, and Hudson counties. And like Michelle, I am a former board member, and we are happy to be with you today and hope that you find this very useful in the important process of goal setting.
All right, thank you, Jean. Okay, so today our goal is to provide you with a high-level overview designed to support your goal-setting conversations and planning efforts. So, we know that effective goal setting helps boards remain focused, strategic, and align your outcomes to the most important part of the work you do, which is your students. All right, so let's just dive in and let's see here. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So let's start with the why. So why is it important to set goals? Setting goals is just not a good idea, right? We believe that it's critical for a leadership function, and goals help define priorities and promote accountability. Okay. So we know that when goal setting is done well, they will align the day-to-day work that is done within your school district to your board's mission and vision. We know that, goals will also provide a clear structure for evaluating the progress as well as driving outcomes, especially when it comes to student achievement. Most importantly, we know that goals allow the board and the superintendent to focus that energy and resources where it truly matters. Now, we talk about effective school boards, and this is a slide that I'm going to say that's dear and near to Jean's heart. So, research and experience has shown us that effective boards set clear goals that are rooted in high expectations for all students. Okay. We know that these boards, they normally share common values, beliefs, in their student potential, and they drive instructional agendas through clear priorities. Okay. And then it's important to know that the emphasis here, when you talk about effective school boards, it always relates back to student achievement, right? And that particularly comes through classroom instruction, by your teachers and staff. So it's important to know that goals should affect or reflect those core beliefs within your school district. Now, now let's talk about current realities when it comes to driving goal setting. So think about the current landscape, okay, or the current things that are going on with in your district. And these current landscapes or things or items, most often brings challenges as well as opportunities for your district. So when you look at these current realities that are listed on this slide here, we talk about that there are learning gaps that still persist, right? I mean, we're still addressing the ripple effect, from the pandemic, okay? We know that mental health is real, right? It's real for students and for staff. And it is a growing concern that we see and hear about daily. Now, family engagement is also a current reality that we're facing. It's critical. We know that, families are busy. Sometimes you have, parents that are working, multiple jobs. So it's often hard to engage into what's taking place within the school district. And then we also know that there is staffing shortages, across the state, right? That is something that we, continue to deal with. It continues to stretch across, all school districts, up and down, the state of New Jersey. So all of these realities, they can shape into your goal setting process. Okay. And it should push you to be more intentional and more strategic when you're going through that goal setting process. Now, this next slide, this is a really good visual. Okay. This is the stair step model of responsibility. And the responsibility flows throughout a district. Okay, you start at the top with your board goals, and this is where you focus on governance, oversight, and strategic direction. Okay, so we're starting at the top with the board goals. Then we're going to flow down to your district goals. And this is where that partnership is developed with the board and the superintendent. And this is where, you will start to formulate the goals really based on the day-to-day operations of the school. And then, from there, you're going to flow down to your building goals. Now, this is mainly for those districts who have multiple buildings, right? Because, there may be specific things that apply to one building versus another building. And then from there, you have your teacher's goals, okay? These are classroom instruction, student support. The teachers are in there really bringing the lessons together that will educate the students. And all of these stair steps that you see in this visual, they all support one another. They support either the one above or the one below, because ultimately we are trying to get to that outcome at the bottom, which is based around student achievement. Now we're going to take a look at the SMART goal framework. Now, this framework really, it's, promoted by the New Jersey Department of Education. So this is what your superintendents will usually use to help formulate the district goals that they will be working in collaboration with the board to set. Now, when you look at the SMART goal framework, your goals should be specific. They should be measurable, ambitious, but yet they need to be attainable. Okay, we want to shoot high in the sky, but we also need to be mindful that it should be something that's attainable. They also should be relevant. Again, I talked about those current realities that are taking place, within your district. So you want to make sure that it's relevant. Okay. And then lastly, you want to make sure that it's time bound, right? There is a clear deadline as to when these goals can be achieved. So when you use the SMART goal framework, this approach will ensure that the outcome, which again, we're going to focus around student achievement, is something that is measurable and tied to the work that is being done daily. So as you look at the note at the bottom, again, your academic goals must be outcome driven, right? So you must see the results of what that goal is set out to do or to accomplish. Now, I really want to just take a few minutes and key in on this slide right here, because there are two types of goals. And I know sometimes you have districts where they make the district goals and the board goals, one and the same. But this is very important, that you understand that there really are two different goals. So when you have your district goals, I touched on this a little bit, this is a collaborative process between the superintendent and the board to set those district goals. And when those district goals are being set, remember that the board supplies the what and the superintendent provides the how. So how are we going to get this done? Okay. Now, when you think about board goals, I want you to really think about these are goals that the board can achieve. So these are goals that the board owns. So what can we do as a board to make our work better? So for example, if you're looking to increase your knowledge when it comes to the work that you do every day as a board member, one of your goals may be to increase your professional development when it comes to the governance piece of the work that you do for your school district. So at this time, I am going to turn the second half of the presentation over to Jean. But before I do that, Michael, can you let me know if there are any questions, comments, or anything out there for the first half of our presentation?
Absolutely, Michelle. Thank you so much. We don't have any questions that I see, but a ton of folks are here. We have 48 attendees in
Okay.
the participants tab right now, so we appreciate everyone's time here this morning. We do, want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, folks, you can obviously use the Q&A function, or we are monitoring the chat as well. I want to say hi to Susan from Dover. Hi, Diane from Ridgefield Park. Greetings from Hackensack from Melanie. Hello, Diana from Mendham Township. Hi. So we are monitoring. Thank you so much. And back to you, Michelle.
All right. All right, Jean.
Okay, so what we have here is the focus. As Michelle said, there are two types of goals, district goals and board goals. So on the next slides, we're just going to separate that out and take a deeper dive into them. The district goals are set with the board and the superintendent, remembering that the superintendent is a non-voting member of your board team, and they are the educational leader of your district. So they often will use that experience to make recommendations to the board for consideration. Now, the district goals will need to be sensitive to the vision and mission that align with your district statement. So what your community values for the students that move through your schools. The district goals also will consider what strategic planning goals, which are multi-year goals that have been set out with community input, so that the district annual goals can be aligned with those strategic goals. We want this to be very efficient and focused on student achievement and bring these things together. They'll also reflect perhaps last year's goals, and if there's any work left to be done on last year's goals, the next steps in that process can be considered in this year. And of course, very importantly, the goals for the district need to be developed towards the purpose of student achievement, but using data. The student data that's available that will be shared with you, and you should be comfortable with working with the data so that you understand the why behind the recommendation for what the district goals are, what the objective is to achieve for students. And on the bottom, we have a sample goal, right? One of the sample goals for a district goal is that by June of next year, the chronic absenteeism rate for the 6th grade will be a year-over-year reduction from 35% to 25%. So what we see in that sample goal is that it was based on data that was informing why that's an important focus for this year. And it also is something measurable. You'll have the numbers to see whether it's been met. One of the things I'd also like to point out is that the district goals are also how you perform your governance function of oversight and appraisal. Because at the end of the year, you start now at this time of the year creating the goals for the next academic year. And then the superintendent's evaluation is in part based on the achievement of these district goals that you as a board will be approving. Again, staying focused on student achievement. Michelle, next slide, please. So one of the things to consider also is how do we align all of the time, talent, and resources? So in the past, we used the phrase preparing our students for the 21st century, but because we're really well into the 21st century, we're now commonly referring to it as preparing our students for the modern workplace. And we recognize that we need to not only provide students with the academic knowledge that they need, but also for these skills so that they're prepared to be ready to go out into the world and follow the path of their choosing having all the preparation that we can provide for them. So of course, to be critical thinkers and collaborative problem solvers, and although they are digital natives, how to appropriately and safely use that. All of the things that we want to see for them. These things on the left are also what we hear back from employers of what they need, right? More than just the transcript, they need people that can work in teams and have these skills. And on the right, we have the list of soft skills. Some of these will be perhaps set up as separate programs, but more often we see these things embedded in the teaching methodology and how teachers work in classrooms with students, recognizing that different students have different needs and need different supports so that they develop these skills that are crucial for their future success, whether they're going on to an academic track after high school or whether they're looking to enter a career. So communication and leadership, teamwork. And I would say as board members, we probably recognize that even as adults and as board members, we can find some of these areas challenging. So we're always looking to support and provide resources for our students and to develop those skills in our own board work so that we can be really, really efficient and stay focused on how we, through governance, serve students in our districts. Michelle, the next slide, please.
Thanks, Jean. Before you move on here, we do have a bunch of questions in the chat that just came in.
Oh, thank you,
We
Michael.
want to take some questions right now before we move on. I had a few questions here that says, can we see an example, or what's an example of a goal?
Okay, go ahead, Jean.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think that we can get to some of that looking at a sample of board goals, and we can also provide resources to boards. One of the things that we will get to is that as field service representatives, this is kind of the work that we do, and we can send things out, and we can also come out and work with boards. But I think some of that might be addressed on future slides.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jean.
Sure.
Jason says, will the presentation be available for us? Yes, it will be available within this Whoogo platform as a resource. The slide deck will be uploaded later today. Someone says, our board retreat is very admin central with only about 3 or 4 board members showing up and about 50 staff members that set our goals. I've only attended one, and we were separated into large groups and given about 10 to 15 minutes to set a goal. It seemed very orchestrated and already determined. The 15 minutes did not allow for meaningful, full conversation. How can I urge our board to be more involved and have a private board retreat to focus on what the board goals should be and to help better board relations, which is very much broken?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I think that that really is at the heart of the work that Michelle and I and the other field service representatives do, is that the board really needs, again, recognizing that district goals are going to be a collaborative discussion between the board members and the superintendent, right? And that the board goals are really going to address more of those things that under governance, the roles and responsibilities and the authority that the board has. So it should really be a discussion, and we are going to look a little bit about the important part that the board self-evaluation can have and being in contact. And by the way, one of the things I would like to just say is that if you're not aware as board members, we generally organize things through the board president, but any board member can reach out to us at any time. And those contacts are confidential, so we can discuss with you, and give you some ideas about how to move forward, especially when it's something that you think would be of value to you and the other members of the board.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback off of Jean, I would encourage that board member who wrote that comment or question to find out who your field service representative is and reach out to them, and then maybe they can work with you on how what is the best course of action to take. Okay.
Yes, and we're you can look your field service representative up on the New Jersey School Board's website. Just plug in, where you are, and it will pop up with the contact information for your field service representative. Okay.
Yep, sounds great. Yes, I did post the field services
Oh,
landing page within the chat right now. So if you scroll down to find your field service representative, you click search now, and then you start typing your district. It'll pop up, and then the card will flip over with who exactly handles your district. So definitely check that out. There are more questions in the chat, but I'm going to pass it back. We'll try to
okay.
get to as many questions as we can, just due to time. I'm going to pass it back over to Jean to continue on, and we appreciate everyone's feedback. We'll try to get to all questions. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we've talked about the process of district goal setting and what that's about and how that works. So now when we look at the board goal development a little bit more, board goals, and for both district and board goals, we do recommend that there be no more than 5, no less than 3 for each, because it's very hard to focus on too many things. And as Michelle was showing in that slide earlier, what we really want is we want kind of a cascading effect where the goals are all, depending on the level someone is working at, are all working towards the same thing of supporting students, right? So for our board goal development, we want to choose a way as a board that we can support those district goals that have been established. You know, how can our governance structure, what we are responsible for, support a district goal? And an example of that might be you are putting some new program in and you've approved that as a board, but the board also has to approve the budget. So you want to be very careful to know that your budget is supporting the initiatives that have been outlined with your district goals that are going to support student achievement. So that's an example of how a board goal could support a district goal. The next part of it, kind of touching upon a way that came up in that question, is a way to start the conversation with your board about what your goals can be, is to actually participate in the board self-evaluation. And we have a tool on our website for you to do that. Unlike the superintendent evaluation, no one is conflicted. All board members are encouraged to participate. And this year, it's been updated to really focus on your board as a team and identify those areas of strength on your team, and then those areas where there's opportunity and challenge to improve so that you can work more efficiently together and stay focused. We know the world we live in and the things that come before boards can at times be very distracting. They can be important and distracting. So our board self-evaluation helps us to hold ourselves accountable, recognize our strengths, and then have the conversation around what areas should we be focusing on improving and how can we make that a board goal and what are the steps we need to do to take to see actual progress towards that goal. Professional development, as Michelle said earlier, also becomes a part of that conversation about how can we learn together. And as you're here today learning as individuals, one of the things we recognize is that when boards engage in professional development together as a team, it helps to strengthen the climate and culture of your board work and create those bonds where you're learning together and you're learning on topics that you agree will best serve you in serving your students. So there are many benefits to a commitment to that. And for those boards that are interested, of course, you can work towards board certification to really build that confidence in yourselves and in your community that you're really professionalizing the work that you do. So a sample goal for board goals is perhaps, this happens to be evaluation season, so completing the superintendent evaluation within the statutory timeframe of July 1st. But I would go even further. In a board goal for this, it might look like in September, setting calendar dates that you will abide by, that you'll know the date of when your superintendent expects to complete their part of the superintendent evaluation, what date you as board members need to complete your section, what date you're going to meet with the board to discuss the superintendent evaluation to get the majority opinion and write up the report, and then what date you're going to meet with the superintendent next June, so that it's all planned out. And that's a board goal that will keep you targeted and focused. You know those dates are on your calendar, less scrambling around later on, and it makes you more efficient, and you're addressing one of the most important responsibilities you have through that goal setting process. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so the goal development process is to, for both, is to set those goals, again, to keep it no less than 3, but no more than 5, because you are really going to be making a commitment to these goals and the action plans that you develop to ensure that you're meeting those goals. We don't want goals to ever be just something we do today and put on a shelf or on a desk and then walk away from. We want to live these goals, okay? You have to develop plans. So for the district goals, the superintendent, as the person in charge, is going to set action plans with their administrative team. They're going to assign responsibilities and put in dates where expectations have to be met. And then the board, for the board goals, should be doing a very similar process. That keeps you focused on achieving those goals, on the work that you do, on the responsibilities that you have towards staying focused on student achievement and supporting the district goals. So again, another important part to this is first setting those goals, second, developing those plans, and then reviewing the progress, usually quarterly, to provide updates. The district goals, the superintendent will normally at board meetings quarterly provide those updates, talk about those things that have been achieved so far and what the focus is, so that not only the board but the community at large is also aware and understands what we're doing here and how we're staying focused and serving the students. And for the board, the president would also do a similar process of reporting out. These are the goals we've set as a board, and this is the progress we're making towards them. And that builds that confidence in the community that the board is really doing the work that they're there to do. Next slide. So here's a sample action plan template, and it can be used for either district or board goals. Again, the process is really very similar. It's just that you as a board have to ensure that you're setting goals for yourself and for the board that are things that you actually control through your authority as a board, right? So at the top of the page, you would say what the goal is, again, using that SMART goal system of really making a goal statement, putting the objective underneath. What is it we want to see by having this goal? How is it going to serve our students? And then outlining 1 to 5 actions that have to happen. And I kind of walked you through this using the example of we're going to complete our superintendent's evaluation by the statutory date of July 1st. And I talked about the steps, the major activities that would have to happen. The board members, the dates of when you're going to complete it, for the timelines. And for other goals, there'll be indicators of success. What you want to do is just like with district goals, where you want to see objective ways to evaluate whether they have been met. We don't want to say, well, I feel like the superintendent is doing a good job. You really want to know, and they will provide to you, this is how you will know when I have achieved this goal. Similarly to the board goals, you want to really make sure that you have indicators of success when you're writing that goal, so that later on, it's not a conversation based on subjectives, but that you all agree that we need to see this to know that we've met our goal in this area. And that holds the board accountable, helps you maintain focus, helps you communicate better with your public about the work that you're doing and how that is really serving their students, right? Because it should be aligned again to your mission and vision, which is the community's voice for what they want to see for students in the district. Next slide, please. So the timeline for goal setting is generally this work is done now over the summer, June to September. The superintendent should be working with the board and discussing the district goals and having those conversations to create what that looks like. After that happens for the district goals, they'll go back to their administrative team and set those action plans of how they are going to accomplish these goals. You as a board should, at this point, be really looking at completing your board self-evaluation. When you use our tool, we then compile it. We can, as field service representatives, then come out and work with your board in a retreat setting to have the conversations about what does the report say? What are you as a board saying about where you are as a board? What are your strengths and what would you need to focus on? And how can we help you get there, right? What does that look like? And sit with you and start that process of creating those goals that will respond to that board self-evaluation and help you identify goals and the steps that you need to create those action plans for going through the year. Then for both the district and board goals, generally regular updates are provided. The board goals can be posted on the board tab of the website so that it's up there and you can introduce them early in the year in September at your meeting, and then provide updates on the progress being made. That also gives your community a window into seeing, you know, the progress that's being made and the focus that you have and the things that are improving in the service of the students in the district. Next slide. So just the next steps, just to kind of go over it again, we have the board self-evaluation, your starting point for your board goals. You can consider what your last year's goals were if you had them, and if anything maybe should be carried forward, especially if it's towards professional development. You might want to set a schedule for if you're looking at certification of your board, you know, setting a schedule for the steps necessary for us to come in and work with your board. You want to collaborate on the new goals. It should really be a discussion, and we should create that environment always when we're working as a team, that we can hear people with diverse thoughts and what's behind why they feel that's valuable. We want to create environments where people are safely sharing that and come to some kind of consensus about what it is that you're going to be focused on in the next in the upcoming year. And then really reach out to your representatives. Even after this presentation, we're happy to just talk more specifically about where you are in your district and your board and what the next steps could look like for you. Next slide, please. So just remembering, as we're kind of summing this up, is that there are 3 keys to effective goal setting. We are all doing this regardless of the title we have or the position we sit at the table, or what side of the table we're on, that we are here to focus on students and student outcomes. That is what we do. We have different roles and responsibilities towards meeting that, right? So we want to really understand what our role and responsibilities are towards this through governance as board members, and what to leave to the superintendent and the administration, but holding them accountable and understanding the work that they're doing and the why behind it. The board does, of course, approve those district goals and holds the superintendent accountable towards them. You want to make sure that all of your goals are going to be aligned, right? We don't mean for this to be a process where, you know, everyone feels overburdened and loses the focus on student achievement. So again, that cascading slide of goals building upon other goals that other members have, right down to teachers in classrooms. They're made aware of what their goals in the classrooms are, working closely with students, because they understand what those expectations are on their building level, on their classroom level, right? And everything should be aligned so that people really feel like they're doing the work together and moving forward together. And then, of course, monitoring the progress intentionally, being happy to bring updates out to the community and to, as a board, request those updates if you're not presently getting them early in the year, suggesting when you're having those conversations with your superintendent about district goal setting, what the expectations are for providing updates quarterly, or what that would look like, or when you can expect certain things to be updated, which are appropriate to, test scores will be talked about at a certain time of the year, but having an understanding of what you should be expecting. So those are really the three keys to effective goal setting. Always staying focused on student outcomes, aligning the work that you're doing so that you're working together as a strong team, and monitoring the progress and holding yourselves accountable to these. Okay, next slide.
Jean, if you don't mind, if I could
Yeah, of course.
just add, because this kind of always helped me remember when I was a board member, how effective goal setting, is and should be. So if you just be clear, be strategic, and be aligned. So just think of those three things, be clear, be strategic, and be aligned when you're going through your goal setting process. And also remember that strategic goals help move the district forward, and aligned goals ensure that everyone is rowing in the same direction. So those are the things that I used to, constantly play in my head
Yes.
when it came down to goal setting. So just wanted to
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think that's helpful. Okay, so now we have arrived at the point that we can answer any questions, and Michael, you can guide us through this.
All right, so we have about 18 minutes left before we have to say goodbye, but we have a ton of questions in the chat, so hopefully we can be able to get through as many as we can. If we don't get to your question, please don't hesitate to reach out to your field service representative or anyone at NGSBA, and we'll forward along to someone who will be able to answer your question. All right, so here we go. Someone says, some members of the board leadership have refused to support a board member's request to review school retention data, even when it's proposed as a measurable outcome. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how to work with individuals who strongly resist using data.
Okay,
Okay, well,
yeah.
maybe I could jump in there.
Okay.
I think that we can recognize first that sometimes we are challenged, and on a board working with board members, and whether it's this situation or another, sometimes it's important to find out the why behind the resistance, right? That might be a starting point, but clearly, I think it's important to focus on the importance of using data so that we're focusing on the process that serves students and leaving subjectivity out of it so that we don't become personal, right? We don't want to talk about whether or not you like your superintendent or don't like your superintendent, or, right? We build trust through being able to work effectively together and looking at the data that supports the decision making. That's certainly what we would want our superintendents to be doing as the chief executive and the educational leader of the district. So we want to support that work by being well equipped and informed to have the discussion so that we can participate and fully support the work that's being done. And it's difficult to do that if we don't have the information we need. I will say that I just caution about, at times, the appropriate way to request that. And that comes down to what your board norms are and how you communicate as a board with your leadership. It may be that you do that through a committee structure, or it may be that you have to go to your president to make that request. So I'd like to couch it in that, just to be aware of how you should be handling that. But yes, certainly decisions made on data is the expectation. And that is something that we do and come out and work with boards also to kind of make people more comfortable about how to use data towards the budget, the financial statements, curriculum and instruction, all of those things. So we might be a resource for you.
Great. This is very informative. I'd like a copy. Yeah, so a copy of presentation will be available as a resource within the SWOGO website, how everyone came in here live here this morning. So you'll see that updated later today as a resource. Are board goals just something that applies to certain people like attendance?
It could be. So
Yeah.
that could be a sample of a board goal. If you're having issues with, board members attending meeting, one board goal could say that, a board goal would be that every board member attend at least 80% of the meetings throughout the year. So
Mhm.
that could be a potential board goal because that's something that you can control
Yeah.
as a board member.
I would like to just add to that point also, specifically with board attendance for meetings, is that you should be checking your bylaws and policies because they should speak to the requirement for attendance for board members to be present. So you would want to write a goal that would align with your policies and your bylaws.
Who should be responsible for creating the action plans based on the template?
For, I'm sorry, Michelle, did you, I didn't mean to step over you.
Yeah, no, I'll take it because
Sure.
we're just so we can keep moving along. So in terms of the action plan, so if the district goals are being set, then it's going to be your superintendent and the administrative
Okay.
leadership team that will set those action plans, right? And provide timelines, resources,
Yeah.
updates. Now, in terms of the board's action plan, it's normally your board president or designee or the entire board. It's really going to be based on, the way that you operate as a board. So the board goals, the board controls the action plans. For the district goals, it's the superintendent and the leadership team that controls the action plan.
Okay. How often do you suggest the board update or review their mission statement? If board goals are created annually, should we also be reviewing our mission statement to assure it aligns with the goals set? It's a good
Uh,
question.
Yeah, so good question. So yes, you should take a look at your mission statement. It could be during the time when you are doing goal setting, but I do know that there are some districts when they are doing their strategic
Yes.
plan, their 5-year strategic plan. That's also a great time to take a look at your mission statement. Because again, those mission statements could be out there from, decades ago. So those are pretty much the two times that you would take a look at that mission statement.
For sure.
I would say that you wouldn't necessarily want to change your mission and vision statements annually while you're doing your board goal setting, because they are better served to be looked at for that 5-year strategic planning so that everything will align, the plans for the multi-years will align with that statement.
Good point. Thank you. Our district has a comprehensive 3-year blueprint with district goals. Is it okay to have a board goal that simply supports the work of the blueprint?
Yeah, absolutely you can. There's nothing wrong with that as being a
Sure.
board goal because
Perfect.
you are, making sure that everything is aligned and that the board is supporting what's coming out of that 3-year plan. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on to that, Jean.
No, not really. I mean, always the board goals are looking to support what the district goals are, or if you're using a multi-year plan. The important thing is we want to align it and we want to just recognize the authority that the board has, and keep our board goals, within the realm of what the board actually has the authority to do.
And just a follow up from the previous question, who writes the mission statement?
Yeah, so I've seen it done multiple ways. I've seen it done out of a strategic planning process where you have your various stakeholders come together to participate and help to craft that mission statement. I've seen it where the board and the superintendent will work together and, shape that mission statement. Gina, I don't know if you've seen it in
Yeah, no,
any other
I think
ways.
I've also had districts where also the board president and the superintendent work together to create like a task force to try to get community input. So there'll be like a small representative group that may sit and look at it. And then, of course, pass it by the board, for final approval and acceptance, because the important thing is we all recognize that that is what we are all committing to.
Another question, are retreats supposed to be recorded? And yes, there was a quorum. So does that constitute as a quorum if the retreat?
So we it doesn't have to be recorded, but if there's a quorum, it has to open and close as a public meeting. It has to be listed, advertised as a special meeting for the purposes of board retreat and education. And it has to be available for the public to come out and attend and listen, but not participate. And often the BA board secretary will list it in the notice of the meeting as no action being taken. It's really for the purposes of board training.
Okay.
If Jean, if I may, I will also suggest that you take a look at your bylaws and your policies, because you may have a bylaw
Right.
or policy that says that your meetings are recorded. So it's important to look at that to see what the structure is of your particular
Yes,
board.
thank you.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've had boards where they do open and close, how they do every meeting in public, but they break away and don't record the part for the board training, which allows a more intimate, less formal discussion of the topic to make it more valuable perhaps to the board members that are participating.
Great points. Is there a source with examples of appropriate board goals?
We do have sample board goals on our website, and in this moment I can't tell you exactly the tab, but we can send them out. We can, Michelle or I, or your field service representative can. We do have some samples to start you off in your thinking.
Okay. How should mission statements and written district visions differ?
Well, I would say that the vision statement is a little bit what we want to see in the future. That's our vision for our students going forward. And the mission is how we're going to conduct that work now, right?
Yes.
So it's more focused on the actual, this is what we're doing to arrive at that vision.
Yes. Well said, Jean.
I think we've almost gotten through every question here. Does a board retreat normally have an agenda?
It should.
There you go.
Well, for us to work well with the board, we need
Yeah.
to know what we're coming in and addressing. And
Sure.
normally we'll coordinate that with either the board president or the board president and the superintendent if they're working in partnership, just so that we can be prepared.
Okay. I think that is it for now. If anything comes in as I do my closing remarks here, I'll definitely try to get through it. But I want to thank Michelle and Jean for a fabulous presentation. Thank you both so much. Thank you to all of the field service reps. You guys are awesome, so available, so knowledgeable. The institutional knowledge is absolutely fabulous. And if you're looking for your field service representative, and if you're wondering who that exactly is, if you don't know already, you could always visit our website, ngsba.org, and go under the field service tab, and you can find your FSR tool under the services tab. Click field services, and that's where you'll find your FSR tool. Again, this session is being recorded and simulcasted on YouTube. So if you're here live this morning, thank you so much for carving out an hour of your time during this very hectic time of year as schools and districts are winding down or really going nuts right now with graduation and all the other events. So it's not really winding down, but as we race towards the end of the school year. So thank you so much for joining us here live. If you're on recording, thank you as well for your interest in our content. I see a couple more comments coming in.
Michael, if I might, there's one that mentions about Matt Lee and who their FSR is. So they can contact our director, perhaps, to be
Gwen Thornton, for sure. Yeah. If you have any questions regarding that, just contact Gwen. You can reach out to her directly and she'll get back to you. I think that's Again, this webinar, because you've stayed for the duration of the presentation, because you're live here today, you will be receiving one Board Member Academy credit that will be reflected on your transcript in a few business days. We are closed tomorrow for Juneteenth, so we are observing that holiday. So just give us a couple of business days, open business days, to get that reflected on your transcript. We appreciate everyone here this morning. Where can we download today's presentation? Again, the presentation will be available through Swogo. How everyone came in here this morning, you'll see that uploaded there as a resource. And then someone said, lastly, just to round out the presentation, this will be our last question today. It will be great to see some sample district goals as well as when you get a chance. So it does seem, Michelle and Jean, that some folks want to see examples. I think that's a common theme here, just to provide some direction to start out as they build their district goals.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. And again, any of the field service reps, we can provide that as a starting. It's helpful to have something as a guide.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And, reach out to your field service rep. If
Yes.
it's Michelle or Jean, obviously, they're here today, but if it's someone else, they're all so available. They're all so knowledgeable, and they're great to work with. So we definitely encourage to reach out to your respective field service rep that knows your district, that knows your community, and knows what everyone's going through. So we
Mhm.
appreciate everyone's time. Thank you all so much. Again, to see all of the previous webinars we've had and a lot of great webinars upcoming as well, go to ngsba.org under the trainings tab, click webinars, and you'll see all of the great webinars upcoming. So we have a ton of content that we'll be doing throughout the summer, well into the new school year in the fall and September. And then unbelievably, workshop is right around the corner as well. If you haven't registered for workshop yet, go to workshop.ngsba.org. Encourage your business administrator to register your school district today. The early bird special ends June 30th. It's a week from this coming Monday. So the early bird special ends at that time. Register your entire school district for $2,200. It goes up to 25 team members. That's included in that district registration. So definitely take advantage of that early bird special. So thank you all so much. If anyone has any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone here at NGSBA, and we'll forward it to someone who will be able to answer your questions. So thank you all so much, Michelle, Jean. Thank you all
Yeah.
again, and we will
Thank
see
you,
you
Michael.
back here very, very